Hi guys, welcome to Hydra Collectibles, where we let our geek flag fly. My name's Luke and I'm your host, and today we are going to be talking He-Man, Masters of the Universe Revelations on Netflix by Kevin Smith. However, today I am not alone, for no, I do not have a guest. This time I have a co-host, and who better to talk He-Man with than my very good friend Peter from Triple G Comics. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hi, Luke. Thanks very much for asking us along.
That's all right. So we are co-hosting this time. This is not a guest or a host situation. We are both equal members here and both very passionate He-Man fans.
He-Man. Love He-Man.
So before we get started, can you just explain a little to the audience what He-Man truly means to you?
Well, that's a great question, Luke. So He-Man is one of probably my earliest memories of what I would class as a superhero kind of series. Loved the cartoon, loved the comics. Obviously, when I was collecting it was the UK version of the comics, the big print comics. And he's just the first toys I ever collected. I remember going on a family trip to London and picking up Stratos, the bird guy, when I was down in London. So yeah, I've got very fond memories of He-Man. Love the series, and I quite like a lot of the modern comics as well. So big He-Man fan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm very much the same. For me, He-Man was my childhood. I'm 36 years old, born in 1985. And for me, at that time, He-Man was just everywhere. Like, it had already soared in the sales for both figures and the TV show. And you couldn't really go very far without bumping into He-Man merchandise, whether it be in the shops themselves or whether or not it be at boot sales, jumble sales, and the secondhand market. It was literally everywhere. It was a real behemoth of a franchise. So tell me, before we crack on with our review of part 2, what did you think of Kevin Smith's part 1 when it first came out on Netflix?
So, like I say, you've got to remember that I watched the original cartoon when it was originally aired, and I've got a lot of nostalgia for it. And I dare say if I was to go back and watch it now, it's not maybe as good as I've got it in my mind. But when I heard of the new He-Man coming out by Kevin Smith, I was ecstatic. I couldn't wait. I did enjoy some of the series that have come over the last few years, but this one in particular I got really excited for. I'm one of those people who quite enjoy Kevin Smith's work. I really liked his work on Daredevil, the comic book. So I was really excited, and I was looking forward to it massively, I have to say.
Yeah, me too. And did it hit the mark, or were you disappointed at any aspects?
For me, I really enjoyed it. It hit the mark. There was a lot of stuff, as you know, and you might touch on it later on. It got a lot of, I think, unfair criticism. I think it got a lot of attacks for various reasons. I sat and watched it with my son, who's 13, who has very little knowledge of He-Man, really, and the pair of us absolutely loved it. A lot of focus on, negativity about the shift away from He-Man to Teela and other characters. But for me, I'm going to say something controversial. For me, He-Man was maybe one of the more boring characters overall. The series is Masters of the Universe, and it was that variety of characters and that colourful characters that I liked. So for me, the series was great. We excellent action at the start with He-Man, then we had a lovely development story as we went through. So yeah, and I loved Orko in it. I thought Orko was tremendous.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you right there. So that first part 1, really was bombarded with a lot of hate, and I actually went onto my channel and defended it, and it's one of my most controversial videos. A lot of dislikes on that video, yeah. But slowly over time the likes have crept back up. I'm hoping that a lot of people do actually go back and revisit part 1 if they enjoyed part 2. The problem is I don't know how many people have checked out part 2 if they didn't enjoy part 1. So yeah, so fair warning to everyone, we are going to go into spoilers for part 2. So yeah, first impressions. Let's just go in with some loose first impressions. What did you think to the overall story?
Well, I mean, interestingly, just going back slightly on what you said there, Luke, this kind of came as a bit of a surprise. There didn't seem to be much fanfare about Series 2 coming out. I haven't seen anything in the press really about it. So to be honest, the second part took us a bit by surprise. I wasn't expecting it. I've binge watched it, it's worth to say. I've watched all, is it 5 episodes, I think?
Yeah.
All 5 episodes in one go. and I love it. I'm just going to say it straight away. I absolutely love it. I think for me, it's got some beautiful storytelling, some very emotional storytelling. The action in it is fantastic. And yeah, I loved it. It has got its faults, but my initial thoughts would be it's a cracking 5-episode watch.
So I watched it the morning it came out. I woke up, I got my kids ready for school, I took them to school, and as soon as I got home, I put it on. Like, housework can wait. And yeah, I sat there for the whole duration. I couldn't really tell you what episode was what, because I watched the whole lot as effectively as a mini movie, or feature length if you actually add up the time. But the first time I watched it, I didn't like it.
Oh, Luke.
The first time I watched it. So I absolutely love part one. And I defended that to the death, you know, so much so that people were really nasty to me online with my love and appreciation for a show. But yeah, I watched this and I don't know if I was just in a bad mood that day, but it just didn't sit with me. Everything that happened, I kind of went, oh no, you've ruined that. Or, oh, but, oh, yeah. And so later that night, my wife came home and she actually asked me, she said, how was the show? Because she knew I was so excited for it. And I said, I don't think I liked it. And she's like, but you love He-Man. You've gone out, you've bought all the toys, you've bought everything. Like, don't tell me you don't like it. I said, I'm gonna need to watch it again. So the following night, because we were actually going to the cinema to see Ghostbusters that night. That's for another discussion. Great. But yeah, we went to go see Ghostbusters that night. So the following night, we rewatched part 2 of Revelations. And I have to say, it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was the first time. So again, with a little bit of a mood change, a little bit of a reevaluation, maybe it's because I knew what was now coming. But the second time, it was like complete opposite side of the coin. I loved it. And I don't know what it was. And I'm so glad that I gave it a second chance so quickly, because don't get me wrong, like you say, there are faults and there's certain things that I can't forgive. There are certain things in here that I'm just like, what odd choice? Why did you do that? But overall, we've got a really compelling story. And I really do feel like a lot of the stuff that was set up in part 1 really did pay off in part 2.
Do you not think, Luke, and I know we've talked about this before, but you are a massive He-Man fan, same as myself, and you loved that first series. And it's a bit like the Spider-Man conversation we've had previously. I wonder sometimes if we build ourselves up to such a level of excitement and anticipation that we're never gonna, it's always going to be a bit of a letdown. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the term in part 1, the term bait and switch was used an awful lot. People didn't like that we had a He-Man show, which it isn't, it's Masters of the Universe, but a He-Man show where it focused on Teela and some of the other characters. Now, I was completely okay with that because Teela is one of the more interesting characters, in my opinion, from that original series. I know people might be fighting me in the comments on that, but I genuinely think that she was. And again, we've always known what her potential storyline would become. We always knew that she was the daughter of the sorceress, and that's where it would lead to. She would be the new protector of Grayskull. So the first time watching this, I was like, oh, it's taking quite long to get there. Like, I get that part 1 was there, and I actually made a note in my book here, writing tedious Teela. I was like, it's taking really long to just get there. But the second time I watched it, I didn't think it was as long. I didn't think time seemed to be different. Once I kind of knew that we were getting there, it was fine. I was happy to watch it. One of the other things was when I first watched it, I was like, oh, we were promised SkeleGod, but now we've got Evil Lynn. And I didn't really see the development of Evil Lynn in part 1. I didn't see her just becoming the next big bad.
Yeah.
But the second time I watched it, I understood her reasoning. The first time I was more upset that SkeleGod was taken away and she was replaced, as opposed to understanding why she was that way, why she chose that path.
So I mean, if we're getting into negatives, that was what probably is my least favorite part. I really liked what they did with Evil Lynn in part 1. And I was expecting at some point a kind of, I guess we got it at the end. I was expecting that to turn on Skeletor, but to be a good guy, as it were. I didn't think she would go down this whole, right, I'm going to wipe out the entire universe. So I had a problem with that. My biggest problem with that entire scene, bud, was how easy Skeletor seemed to just hand everything over, and he didn't
Exactly. He gave up ultimate power to Bone.
Yeah.
Like,
But then even after that, when she turns into Evil Lynn God or whatever, he just kind of goes, "Oh, nuts," and then disappears. He didn't try and fight or anything.
yeah.
So I found that a bit strange.
Well, the thing is, I feel like it was strange, but I do feel like on the second watch that made a lot of sense for Skeletor, because not only has he held the power, he knows just how powerful she is, but he's also always known that she's more powerful than him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's kind of held her down, trodden on her down, kept her down. It's basically an abusive relationship, isn't it? Like that's what it all came down to. But again, this is my problem. So these are some of the things that I can't accept, because he relinquished the power so easily, and yet the whole point of that show was, even Man at Arms said, not once have you given up the power, you've kept hold of it. And then we had Evil Lynn looking in the mirror and saying, show me all the times the power got relinquished.
Yeah.
So I thought she was going to come up with this masterful plan that would happen right at the end to save the day, that would strip him of his powers so that they could save the day. Not that at the end of episode 3, she would just become the next bad guy. Now, despite that negativity, now that I know the path that was taken, I can look at it more fondly, but it doesn't change the fact that it's very jarring that first time round.
Yeah, very much.
While we're on the subject of power, and I want to say that we're going to jump around here. We're assuming that everyone's seen it. We gave our spoiler warning. We're not doing this one episode at a time. We're just jumping left, right, and center, however we think about it.
How my old brain works, Luke. Just random.
What is it about giving these women power, but then giving them these haircuts? Like, that's something else that I just can't. So I thought Teela, back with the old-fashioned design, and even when she took down her hairpiece and threw it and said, "I'm off," I thought she looked stunning. Like, I thought she was really well drawn, well created. And as a bloke, I thought she was pretty hot. And then all of a sudden we see her evolution, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the strong, independent woman thing and everything else. And it made sense for her to go on this journey. But what was with like the short haircut and everything else, which I know a lot of people have problem with.
Yeah.
Even if it was just the one character, I could allow it. But as soon as Evil Lynn got the power, all of a sudden she had like short hair. In part 1, she took off her helmet, long, luscious, white hair, and that was just stripped away from her the minute she gained any form of power. And then they done it for a third time, right at the very end with Andra. She became the new Man at Arms, and she had a haircut.
Yeah.
I as someone, and I'm trying not to approach this as a negative male. It's not about what I like to look at or how I think women should be. It's more about, like, I watched this with my son and my daughter, and my son and daughter are a lot younger than yours. There was moments where I was a bit like, oh, should they be allowed to watch this? But more importantly, I didn't want them to think that to be strong and independent, you had to change so much.
Yeah.
And that's, I hope people watching this understand that it's not me being sexist or looking at it in a nasty way. It's about my children. Like, my daughter watched that, and I don't want her to think that she has to appear a certain way to seem powerful.
I think this comes back to a lot of the criticism that was levied about the first part of the season, in that there seems to be, either whether it's at the writing side or the artistic side or whatever, there seems to be this belief that to be a strong female character, you've got to be incredibly butch, shaven head kind of archetype, and it's just not true. And like you say, season 1, I kind of forgave it, poo-pooed it a little bit when it was Teela, because I thought, oh, come on, it's just, but then it's like every female character now seems to be that kind of body type, and you think, I get that the power or whatever buffs you up and gives you strength, get that, but I don't get the haircut, the sudden dropping of hair. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
If anything, I would almost expect it to be the opposite way. Even for men, I would expect you to be more naturally, how humans were meant to be. Yeah. So, He-Man could have like short hair, but the minute he summons the power, maybe he gets long locks and stuff, which would help in people not realizing it's him. You know,
kind of got with the Savage He-Man thing, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah. So now that you mentioned Savage He-Man, Hulk. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, right?
Yeah.
So one of my other problems watching it the first time round was, you know, we all know Kevin Smith is a geek like us. He's a fan of various franchises, but so much in this was stuff that we've seen before in other universes, whether it be the depths of Castle Grayskull with the pool and the water looking like the Fortress of Solitude from Superman, or whether or not it be, you know, the hulking Savage He-Man. How did you feel about Savage He-Man?
Well, I guess firstly, I loved the transformation. I loved the whole the sword's just the conduit and he can get the power. I wish they hadn't spoiled that in the trailers, because I quite liked that scene. Hulk and He-Man, I liked. I have to say, I don't really understand why he was like that. I'm not quite sure why he was savage and all the rest of it. But I thought the fight scenes were tremendous. My only negative, I guess, would be that He-Man to me is your archetype hero and all the rest of it. They showed him in a bad light there. I mean, he was literally ripping things apart and killing animals, and there was at one point a stream filled with blood, I think, that he caused. It was a bit too near the knuckle for me, because this is a guy you're supposed to look up to and respect, and he's the main hero, as it were. So that was a little bit strange. It was very Hulk. It was very reminiscent of some of the Avengers kind of scenes and things, but I did enjoy the fighting. I enjoyed the battle with Skeletor. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think they explained why he was that way really very, very clearly.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, my perception is that that was just raw power, you know, untempered by the sword. The sword kind of like acts as a resistor and gives you what you need, but not overpower you. So I can kind of see that. My biggest problem is that this was like, again, going back to the whole what we thought Evil Lynn would do with betraying Skeletor at the end and saving the day. I thought that Savage He-Man would make a reappearance later on. Like, we even had Skeletor saying, "We've seen you do it again." And he went, "No, I'm never going to do it." He should have been fearful to do it, but they should have been in a situation where they had no choice. And even if that was when Teela came in as the sorceress and said no more and reverted him back and he dropped to the floor, you know, he should have had to have done it. We saw this beast right at the beginning, and he never comes back again. You know, it was a Chekhov's gun that didn't reappear. It didn't go anywhere. And again, for a show that paid off so much from part one, it didn't do the same for paying off its own things as this series continued. So yeah, Savage He-Man, didn't really like that it was so Hulk, even to the point where Teela was holding out her hand, much like Black Widow, in the Avengers. It's not, it was too obvious where he had grabbed that idea from. It wasn't original. It wasn't his own. It works, don't get me wrong. Like, it's a tried method. We all know, we all love the Death Star, so they brought it back multiple times. If it works, go with it. But it was just so obvious where that stuff came from.
And I think it depends where the aim in this show at. I think there's very much aimed at people like ourselves who like the original series. That's why they brought in some of the kind of the old characters. I mean, Fisto, dear Lord.
That line, that was the first warning sign, and I hated that both times they've done it, because it's so out of place.
Very much Kevin Smith, that wasn't it? It was, but then also, is he aiming it at kids? Because actually, that I see how he just said the Hulk, that He-Man Hulk scene battle was pretty graphic, pretty brutal, and my son loved it. Do you know what I mean? It's just entertainment on the screen if you don't think about it much and you don't try and work out what's going on. If you just watch it for pure visceral fighting, it's entertaining. But going back to what you just said there, Luke, about the whole Fisto bit, that as soon as that line about the Skeletor came out, I just thought, where we're going with this? And it was like watching some of Kevin Smith's more infantile films.
I just didn't find it funny. Both times that I watched it, I was like, I see what you're trying to do. Like, we all know that the names are silly. We all know growing up what that means. But to put that in your show, it took away from this awesome character, because he is a great character. Fisto is amazing. This is something else. Again, we're going to jump around, right? So there was this whole big deal about them not going to heaven and Skeletor having them in the palm of his hands, and he sent them to hell instead. So where were they on that battlefield when hell opened up? We could have had Orko and them return. And whether or not they had to go back, whether or not they could, redeem themselves, I would have much rather of them gone, no, you're staying here, and the other guys grab them and they reach out for Orko, they miss him, he's going off and he's going, oh, it's okay, and have Evil Lynn going, no, not this time, because they had their bond. So I just feel like that there was missed opportunities with that. It was quite sad to see a lot of characters die in this from our childhood.
But yes, so you mentioned the Orko scene there, and I'm a massive Orko fan, and I was so pleased they brought him back. And you're right, they killed off lots of characters. And I mean, they killed off, I don't think they brought Heaven back at the end, did they? They killed off Heaven still. So it felt high stakes. And then Orko's drifting off, and you get your tearful bye. And then Evil Lynn says, hang on a minute, and gets a hold of his hand, and that's fine. So what power does she have to stop him going into heaven?
Again, I didn't like that. But the second time round, I went, oh, she done the same thing with Man-at-Arms. So when they were teleporting first out of the castle, she went, no, not you. And so again, going back to the Chekhov's gun idea, I can allow it. I can suspend my disbelief a little bit. It's still not good. It's not well thought out. It's not a good thing just to have her do. This was the other thing. Evil Lynn's backstory. It was bad. Like, I want to know how she got her power. Like, if her parents want to eat her and she runs off, all of a sudden she goes, and I've done that for 20 years. It's like, okay, but I want to know those 20 years.
Is that canon? Is that, because that was a bit jarring as well. My mum and dad want to eat it. So I've read a fair bit of the Master of the Universe stuff, and that one doesn't jump to mind, I have to say.
No, I don't think it was canon. I don't know if any of this becomes canon. I don't know if, like, even when they say it's not, maybe in a few years' time they will, retcon it and say that it is. I have no idea. I mean, this happens with a lot of franchises all the time. Things get swapped and changed. Overall, I am okay with a lot of this. I mean, even her destroying heaven, I'm a fan of that. Like, as an agnostic, I wouldn't say that I'm
going to get lots of thumbs down for that, Luke. Lots of thumbs down.
As an agnostic, I would love to be proven that there is something more, but at the moment, I'm not quite there. I have more questions than answers. I wouldn't call myself a flat-out atheist, but as an agnostic, I would say that too many people live their lives hoping for something more, and they're not appreciating what they have now. And so the idea of getting rid of that afterlife, of that victory, that glorious afterlife that you can go to, I'm hoping that people of that universe now live their lives to the fullest. I can get where she's coming from with that. So I was okay with her getting rid of heaven. It's weird that it didn't come back, but I can see her getting rid of it. And we've mentioned about Orko's return. What did you feel about her relationship with Beastman? Because in part one, he was like this really loyal, he saved her multiple times, and then she just treated him like crap, basically. Like, is that good?
Yeah, well, no, it's not good, but I think it's a reflection of the relationship between her and Skeletor, isn't it? She's treating, and I think Beastman said it at one point, didn't he? You're just like him, kind of thing. So she's just reflecting the behavior she's had for however many years. I felt really sorry for Beastman. And you know what? I started off by saying I love this, and I really did love it. So I hope it's not coming across too negative. But the bit where Beastman turns into the four-legged beast thing, that didn't do it for us. I would rather than just but I suppose that was something to fight Battlecat, I guess.
So I agree with you there. So the two times that I watched that, I hated that moment. I get that she said to him, "Are you beast or man?" And this time he said beast. I get that, but I didn't like it. Both times I didn't like it, but my wife did. My wife went, "Oh no, I think that's fine. I think that looks cool, and also I think that would make a great action figure." And all of a sudden I went, "Yeah, I think you're right." And I thought to myself, I was like, the Revelations Battlecat. Sorry to talk about figures for a moment, but the Revelations Battlecat is huge, biggest Battlecat we've ever had. If they make that Beastman it's going to be even bigger because it was like 3 times the size of Battle Cat. I don't know what that's going to do for cost. I don't know how expensive that would be, but I
What did
think
you think of? Sorry, what did you think of the death of Panthro, of the Panther thing?
yeah, I wasn't happy. A bit of a cop out, really. Like, we waited so long to see him, and like even Skeletor, like his reference of "Look, Lynn, it's
Yeah,
Panther." It's like, why would you say that?
yeah,
Um, I love the Battle Cats. I love Panther. I love Battle Cat, Cringer. Like, it's all one of the same for me. I absolutely love it. I've got an entire Battle Cat collection.
yeah.
Like, if we're talking about collectibles, comics and figures is one thing. I've just got Battle Cats. But yeah, I was really sad to see Panther go. And again, this is going back to those characters that we have just lost and they're never coming back. So the Sorceress, we knew that her time would have to come at some point. Seeing her, pass away in that beginning, it was expected, but it was
Yeah.
still shocking. And Man at Arms scream was like, it was awful. Like, it was to see how much pain that was, for him emotionally. But my problem is that Sorceress has been the Sorceress for all that time. The rules of Grayskull are the rules of Grayskull, the rules of the universe. So why is it that Teela can just decide that those rules don't apply to her and she can leave the castle whenever she wants?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes no sense.
Makes no sense
Yeah.
at all. And I still have a problem with that. So again, I need to stress, just like you did before, is that we are pointing out a lot of negatives here, but overall it's still entertaining. It's still a good show. I wouldn't say it was the worst thing I've ever seen. And I will probably watch it multiple times. I think I will always watch part 1 more often than part 2. If you watched it as a whole and you took away all the end credits and you just watched it as one big movie, I think it really works. I
Yeah,
think
I
there is
agree.
a lot of things that are revealed in part 1 that pay off in part 2, and loads of stuff in between. I think overall this really does fit the bill. I think it works. I think Kevin Smith done a great job. Would you agree with that, or do you?
Absolutely. I think, and I probably will go back and watch it as a one long big show, I guess. I don't know if I agree that I would watch season 1 more than part 1 more than part 2. I quite enjoyed the switch my brain off fighting side of the second half. I felt there was a lot more action in it. And I liked the animation. I thought the animation was very good. It was quite action movie focused, if you know what I mean. There was some big set pieces and things. And I enjoyed some of the throwbacks as well. Some of the stuff like it was a throwaway line in the original series about his man being from Earth, but they made sure they referenced that on a couple of occasions. I quite like that, and so yeah.
Did you not feel like some of the dialogues was forced, or do you
Yeah.
think, like, so her saying like, and I almost went back to Earth? Like, do you think that was forced, or do you feel like that was just a natural dialogue to say?
No, it was very much. I think there was a list of things to tick for fans, and that was some of it. It'll be interesting actually to go back and rewatch and see which episodes were actually written by Kevin Smith and which weren't, and how that plays out. Because sometimes his dialogue is very bizarre, I find. But no, I think there were some very forced bits in it, and I think there was some very much ticking of boxes to get some of the. Some of the villains were tremendous. That you got to see that we haven't seen. Well,
we got Pig Boy. We got Pig Boy, which was it's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. It's my understanding that Pig Boy exists because of the live action movie had a competition where a young kid was allowed to win a part on the He-Man show. You see him for a fraction of a second in that film. But we got Pig Boy in this show. They dug deep. And I mean, even to the point where Man at Arms said, "You're scraping the bottom of the barrel." Like, you are. Like, it was so good to see these characters.
As well, like the mechanical horses that King Rando's on, and then the aircraft and so. It was, for me, I think it ticked a lot of boxes in terms of, as a show for kids to watch. I think there's enough violence, fighting, storyline to keep them, so hopefully get some new fans. And for an old fogey like myself, there was enough nostalgia and things to make us go, "Oh yeah, I remember that," or "Oh yeah, that's nice." So yeah, it hit on all levels. I don't know if we're going to touch on the end, Luke, the very
Yeah.
end.
So just before we get to the end, there's two things that I want to say. So the first one, while I was watching it the second time round, we got to the last episode. My wife was feeling a bit tired. She wasn't sure if she was going to go to bed. So we paused it and I went and made a coffee. When I came back, it was the first time we had to watch it again from the beginning. So like with the title cards and everything else. So it was the first one that I saw the title of the episode. So all the others, I have no idea what they are. But the title of the title of the end episode is Comes With Everything You See Here, which I thought was a really nice nod to the old adverts for toys back in the day, because that literally was a kid's toy box poured out as a battlefield. And we had all of those, like you say, the mechanical horse, all the action figures, the monsters, we had the castle itself, we had all the jet fighters and planes. Like we literally had our childhood tipped out on the floor. You know, it was amazing. So that title was a really nice touch. Again, I haven't gone back to see what the other titles are, but I do remember that one specifically because I paused the video at that time. The last thing that I want to talk about before we get to the end, I really loved that scene with Savage He-Man and King Randor.
Yeah.
Like that almost brought a tear to my eye. Like Randor is such a cool character. Like he's a strong warrior leader and all that lot. And he always, for years and years and years, no matter what series of He-Man you watch, always put his son down for not being strong and always compared him to their champion, He-Man, not realizing they were one and the same. And so to see him, you know, standing there in front of his son, who he thought had died, he thought was gone forever, and saying sorry, that was deep. That really did.
I thoroughly enjoyed that part, and I think there were a few bits like that where it was quite emotional. And I think that's something that this series did very well in terms of trying to flesh out the characters. I mean, we even got marital differences, you know, between Rando and the Queen, which was interesting. So yeah, I loved that scene, and I think, you know, you mentioned in there about him being a bit of a badass. At the end, the last episode, when he's taken on all the demon creatures, it was tremendous, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very moved by that bit, and there's a few bits with Teela and Man at Arms and things which are similar as well. I think on an emotional point of view, it's not a film. The series does have a lot of impact. There are some very nice scenes like that, even between Skeletor, I guess, in some regards. You know, yeah, I just enjoyed it. What did we think? Sorry, what did we think about He-Man giving Skeletor the power to like join forces at the end?
I felt that was a really odd move, but at the same time, I can see Adam's reasoning for it, because he has been to heaven and he has seen true good, you know, all the previous versions of himself. And so I feel like he believes anyone, even Skeletor, can be redeemable. And so I can see he's choosing for it. And I can also see how shocked he was that Skeletor then turned on him.
Yeah.
What was his end game with that? Because so I had two thoughts about this whole power sharing thing. So they get the sword back from Evil Lynn, and despite him summoning the power, she still stays in that form because she hasn't relinquished it. You know, so I get that you use the sword to gain it, but it doesn't just automatically come away from you. It's still with you until you give it up. Does that mean that because he made SkeleGod, that he had to give that up at some point himself? Because he wasn't like it at the end. Like he literally got like spun around and thrown when He-Man said it's not about us. But he was still SkeleGod at that point. And then when we saw him, he wasn't. I'm trying to work out how the power works, because I do believe that you need rules in these universes, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, whether it be Masters of the Universe. You need rules, and that's why I don't like the idea of Teela just changing those rules because she chose to. You know, I can understand if they would then say she was trapped in Grayskull, but He-Man said, "I'm going to find a way to free you from this," and that could be like the next season. Like they should. You have to have rules in your universe, because if not, nothing matters. You can just make it up as you go along, and that's what's going to harm the franchise more than anything else.
You're right, Luke, because I hadn't really thought about that at the time, but he doesn't relinquish the power at all, does he? No. The last you see of him is when he's chucked over the hill or whatever. Interesting.
And also, does it dilute the power? You know, there's only so much power in the universe, and if one person has it, when they summon more power for themselves, does that dilute their power? Like, is it evenly spread? Like, I want to know how these universes operate. Like, I need more exposition. I need more information.
Whereas I just want to see them hitting things.
Yeah, see, that's, yeah. I would be like Skeletor. The minute I had that power, I'd be like, right, now I need to see how this universe works. Stand there for like an hour. Yes, so let's talk about that ending. I'm not gonna lie, I flipped out. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. What were your thoughts?
So yeah, so I'm glad they went back to the whole technology side of things at the end. I can't remember what they called the individual, the god thing.
Motherboard.
Motherboard. I was desperately trying to think, have we seen Motherboard before? Is she another character or something like that? And I don't remember her. But then the flip thing at the end there, where obviously you see that she's part of the Horde and she's got the Hordak image, I thought it was tremendous.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it's got to come at some point.
So this is the thing, right? So Masters of the Universe is amazing because it shouldn't work, right? This is a franchise where they literally threw everything together. You've got barbarians, you've got technology, you've got dinosaurs, you've got monsters, you've got wizards and witches, you've got everything all thrown in. But for some reason, the mythology is really strong and it really works. And the whole idea of Hordak coming to Eternia and leaving behind this tech, which obviously over the generations they have used and harnessed, makes so much sense. And I really didn't, I was shocked by myself because I was sitting there going, of course it's Hordak.
Yeah.
How did I not think that Motherboard was going to be connected to Hordak?
Well, I have to be honest, I didn't pick up on that on the start of the season, when there was all the technology.
No, me neither.
When it started to kind of ring true was when you saw the backstory to Evil Lynn, and Skeletor was in, because Skeletor used to work for Hordak, didn't he? Yep. And Skeletor had his Hordak belt on. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then obviously you get the end. I guess the bit I'm interested in is, I don't know where the rights to She-Ra lie at the moment, because she's got her own animated series and whatnot. But it would be tremendous to get She-Ra in the next season. That would be superb.
Yeah, so I mean, the She-Ra fan base is a strange one. This is going to add to the controversialness of this video. Please don't hate on me, guys. I'm
just a guest.
You're not a guest. You're a co-host. Equal blame. So She-Ra had a Netflix show made by Netflix/DreamWorks, and I watched that with my daughter. My daughter put it on, and we sat and we watched it, and I really enjoyed it. I've made a video about Shadow Weaver as she is depicted in that version of She-Ra. And she was by far my favorite character. She truly was amazing. Now, there's a lot of stuff in there that seems forced as well, because they're trying to get across this message of, you know, everyone can be whoever they want to be. There's no gender specifics, no this, that, and the other. Love who you want to love. I get that. It's a good message for kids to have. I'm not against it. And I really enjoyed that show. However, there are others out there, much like the people who hate Revelations, who also hate that She-Ra show. Yeah. Right? As a fan of Masters of the Universe, I love all versions, whether it be the comic books by DC or by Image or by any other company that wants to do them. I love the toy lines of all different types. I love the various TV shows and movies that we've had. Anything that keeps this franchise alive is fine by me. And when I talk about my Battle Cat collection, I literally have every version of Battle Cat that they have made, minus one or two things. Like I don't have a pop figure. I don't care about pop figures. But for the actual toys, I try to get every single one that exists.
Yeah.
And having that variety, it doesn't take away. This is the problem with people with reboots and reimaginings of shows or movies. So many people have a problem going, oh, you've ruined my childhood. Well, your childhood is still there. You can still go back and watch that anytime. Don't be offended. And so my problem is that there is this huge fan base for this She-Ra show that came out only a few years back on Netflix. If we then do a new She-Ra, they're going to have problems with that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not going to be the same. You know, they took real, artistic license in changing a lot of these characters. So like the character of Catra in that DreamWorks show, she looks nothing like how we remember Catra in the old what's it, Filmation show. So she looks nothing like that character in the Filmation show. So yes, I really want to see it. I don't know if we will, because I don't know where those rights are tied up. If it's over
I'm
at
not sure.
DreamWorks, I don't know if we're going to get it, but I would love to see it.
I've not seen any of that the new She-Ra show, but good friend of mine's watched it and they loved it, absolutely loved it. I don't know, I think I saw the trailer for it and the animation style put us off a little bit. A bit like I'm a huge Thundercats fan, and they did a Thundercats Raw series.
So bad.
It's just horrific, you know, absolutely horrific. So I'm not sure, but I mean, I would love to see that character back in this series somehow. Would you be adverse to Kevin Smith continuing it on? I know he's had a lot of flack for it.
I would love to see him continue it on. I am a Kevin Smith fan. You know, you mentioned it earlier yourself, and I mentioned it again here. You know, yes, it did take me 2 watches before I was fully on board. And I have to stress, you know, these little nitpicks that we have, you know, my biggest nitpick out of all of them is the women getting those haircuts.
Yeah.
That's my biggest nitpick, because whether or not they choose to shave their head is up to them. But Evil Lynn had it mystically done. Like there's no, you can't explain it these both different ways. So my biggest bugbear is that. But then when you compare, some people got a haircut compared to the amazing scene you had with King Randor and He-Man, it's no competition. Like the good outweighs the bad. And I know that we have been very negative in this portrayal, but I think as true fans, you're allowed to be. I think we are allowed to say what works and what doesn't. And, you know, Kevin Smith, if you're watching, which you're not, you know, take this on board and make these things better moving forward. Like, I'm not saying you have to retcon stuff or change things. You've done it, you've put it out there, that's fine. But wouldn't it be great if, like, the next thing that we see is Skeletor, like, rebuilding those parts of Panther because he wants to find a way to bring him back to life and bring those characters back. You can find ways to do it where it makes sense to the story and make that be a quest. Oh, I need to bring Panther back, but I need part of him in order to do that. Go on a quest to find others of his kind or other things. Like there's ways to do it that can really trigger a good story.
I don't know what the viewing figures have been like for this series. I don't know how well received it's been outside of the negativity. Do you know? I don't know how likely we are to get a season 2.
Again, I think it goes back to what you said, you know, very little has been advertised about it. So a lot of people probably don't even know that it's out there. I had a few friends of mine see me make a post on Instagram and they were like, oh, is the show out? And I was like, yeah, go watch it. So I just don't think that people know it's out there. And whether that's by choice, because the backlash for part 1 was so great, maybe they just wanted to slip it out there and see where it settled by itself. Yeah, it's strange. It's interesting.
I guess what a tremendous time to be a He-Man fan, because we've got the Kevin Smith show, we've got She-Ra, as you've just mentioned, and then there's that other tremendous, I don't know, is it called He-Man and Masters of the Universe? The second Netflix show, which again, very different take, you know, very modern version. And you know, for the nostalgia guys like myself, some of the changes they've made the characters probably freak people out, but actually it's a really entertaining show. I thoroughly enjoyed that as well, you know, for different reasons.
As did I. I'm waiting for those toys to come over this side of the pond. They seem to be Walmart exclusives at the moment, and we probably won't see them for a year or 2. But I need that battle cat. Yeah, so I agree. When it comes to all of this stuff, you know, He-Man, like you say, it's the best time to be alive. I think a lot of that has to do with Mattel, because I don't know if many people know, but Mattel obviously created He-Man from scratch, but they sold those rights over to Universal. When He-Man failed back in like the 80s and the 90s, they didn't see the profit within, and so they sold those rights to Universal. And at the moment, Mattel still have first refusal rights for all things He-Man, but that runs out in like a year or 2. I think it's 2023. So that's why we're seeing so much merchandise being pushed onto the shelves, because they're making money out of it while they still can. Because as soon as those first refusal rights go back, it's open play for everyone. So hopefully they continue this origin line of figures. Hopefully they continue the Masterverse line. But there's no telling if someone else comes with a new offer on the table, we might never complete those sets. Now, I'm in two minds of that because I am a collector. You know, I'm a completionist as well. I want to own all of them. Um, so I'll be upset if a new company comes along and says, well, we're going to do that license now. You know, you won't get those Masterverse figures from Mattel any longer. I would be quite upset. But at the same time, part of me is thinking, well, what if NECA get it back? Like NECA have done figures before, and if they can do them again, that could be pretty cool. My wallet's screaming. My wallet is wanting to run away and hide, but I
Do you
can't.
think we'll
I
get a
can't
movie?
deny.
Do you think we'll get a live action movie?
I don't know. It's like the live action movie is a hard one to do, even if they stuck to the source material. Like that first one was so off the mark. Like it wasn't, not my He-Man. Um, I don't know. It's tricky, isn't it? Like, can you imagine? Like, how would they go about doing Battle Cat? Would they do it like the live action or CGI live action Jungle Book or?
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get something when there was all the popularity with Lord of the Rings and things like that. When the public embraced that kind of, fantasy and, goblins and monsters and all that kind of stuff. You could have seen a He-Man movie fitting in quite nicely around that time. But I don't know if we've missed a shot with that a little bit now.
Hmm.
I don't know.
My problem is that again it goes back to who they're marketing it for, because again nostalgia is hot at the moment. Like nostalgia is what's selling everything. But much like comic books, it's just us middle-aged men that are going out and doing it. And yes, my son, he's 3 years old. He's watching these shows, all of them, including the She-Ra shows and everything else. He's watching the whole lot. We bought him the entire Castle Grayskull and all the available figures from the Origins line for his birthday. And he absolutely loves it. But then my nieces and nephews come over of a similar age and they haven't seen it. Despite the fact that they still have access to Netflix and all the other channels, they haven't seen it. So it makes me wonder when he's at school, how many of his friends are watching it as well. I don't know where that line is drawn. I think it is still us middle-aged men. Yes, these Masterverse toys are in toy shops, but are kids buying them? I looked through the Christmas catalog at Smith's Toys, and these figures aren't in there.
Yeah, they're not there. But I guess I know we're going off track a little bit, but I guess look at Transformers. Who thought would have a multi-movie franchise with Transformers, and that's not being sustained by the original cartoon geeks. I don't think. That's taken a life of its own. So maybe you just need that initial movie to come out and get into people's minds.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to be honest, now would be the perfect time to do it. I'm a big fan of those Conan films and all that lot from back in the day. Again, it's going on the nostalgia, but to bring that forward now, I actually think I think I have read somewhere that Disney Plus are actually doing a new Willow series with Warwick Davis. I love that show. I love that film. It's one of my favorite fantasy films of all time. And to think that if they could do that now with the effects that we have nowadays, I think it would be phenomenal. But then I don't know, would you like to see a Masters of the Universe movie, or would you like to see a TV series much like The Mandalorian and things like that?
Both.
Why? Yeah. Why pick one where we can have?
I honestly don't know. Look, I think for the sustainability of the franchise, a movie's your best bet, because if it's a good movie, because if you get a good movie out there, it's got worldwide eyes, worldwide access. If it's a shocking movie, then you've torpedoed the franchise like the old Masters of the Universe film did, really. But if you can just get that hook in, and get people interested. I mean, like I say, look at the Transform. I'm a huge, again, as you know, huge Transformers fan. Those movies are absolutely dire. They're horrific, but it's keeping the franchise going. It's keeping things alive, So yeah, I think you've mentioned on a previous video, I think you mentioned earlier on there, anything that keeps these characters going, anything that keeps these characters ticking for another generation, is good by me, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting those hooks in where your franchise doesn't disappear. So like there's a lot of shows like Masters of the Universe, like Thundercats, etc., that kind of they went away and then they've been brought back. But then you look at other things like Transformers, like Turtles, who have been there forever. Like You go into a toy shop and they are always there. They are consistent. They never leave. They just adapt and change. And out of all the different turtle shows, there's maybe only a handful, maybe 2, 3 that I like. The rest I don't. But that's okay too. You know, they're not my generation's turtles. They're not characters of my time, but it still keeps the franchise alive moving forward. So I've got no complaints. You know, they can make as many of them as they want. And this goes back to what we said about Spider-Man in the MCU. Okay, the MCU might be done with Spider-Man and he goes back over to Sony, but Sony are going to continue to make those films every 5 years to maintain the rights, which means that we will forever have Spider-Man movies, no matter how good or bad they are. We will always have them, because sometimes that money and that legal side makes more sense to keep hold of.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So that's pretty much all I've got to say on the Revelations Part 2. I know we did go off on a little bit of a Masters of the Universe tangent, but, you know, that's what we're here for. It's all part of the same. Is there any other final things, any final words that you want to give on this series?
No, just that, again, from my perspective, it's a really good series. It's got good action, good storytelling, some real emotional points. I would just encourage people, Luke, to disconnect from all the noise that's out there and watch it for themselves. And if you don't like it, that's fine, but at least you've given it a shot. And I think that's the important thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. You can't have an opinion on something if you don't give it a chance. So yeah, with that, we'll sign off here. We'll say goodbye to everyone. But yeah, hopefully this will be an ongoing thing with the co-hosting and everything else, because I've really enjoyed spending time with you on this interactive space that we call the internet and YouTube. And obviously we met up at Thought Bubble and got to know each other in person. So hopefully we'll do more of this in the upcoming months. So yeah, that's it. Take care, everyone.
Thanks now. Bye.